the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Our first order of business is welcome Hartley. Thank you for your first meeting. You picked a good one.
Thank you.
All right. And the first real order on there is to approve minutes from the March 2020 meeting. Packet somewhere.
Should be right under the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Approval by Martin. Any seconds?
I'll second it.
Any questions, comments on the minutes? Okay, let's vote. Ryan,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Holly,
Yes. Yes.
Hannah, Nathan.
Yes.
Marla.
Yes.
Okay, and I will vote yes. Okay. Next item is consider approval of site plan by Skyline Motorsport at 2333 Sweet Parkway Road. Greg, do you want to give us the rundown on this?
Yes, Skyline Motorsports is requesting permission for site approval to construct a 10,168 square foot building with a partial second floor mezzanine. The new structure will be on a 5-acre lot. Use is compliant with ordinance regulations M2, chapter 17-112, limited industrial district. Bulk regulations 17-112-050 is compliant. Parking stalls required per 1752 is 10, and 10 stalls are provided with one barrier-free stall. Staff recommends approval. And I know city engineer did a report that provides recommendations.
Okay, do you? All right, all right. Ryan is stepping off. He's excusing himself. Thank you, Ryan. Any other questions here from the commissions on this project?
That's correct. A couple minor items on the site plan, but from our perspective, nothing major. Just a couple things getting labeled, loading space, for example, but we believe they have adequate space, just a matter of showing it on the site plan. So yeah, I can go over this in detail if you'd like, but for the most part, very minor items, we would recommend approval.
Any other comments, questions? How about a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Okay, Marla's made a motion. A second? All right. Moved and seconded. Let's vote. Martin,
Yes.
Holly,
Yes.
Hannah,
Yes.
Nathan, and Marla.
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. Martin, do you want to grab Ryan? Tell him to come back. All right, the next item on the agenda for tonight is consider approval of a conditional rezoning agreement for Prairie Lakes Church in the Decorah Business Park subdivision. Greg, we've already had this in front of us for rezoning, but do you want to give us a detail, maybe an overview of the rezoning and then some more detail on what the conditional
That's
agreement?
exactly here. I think we've all kind of been around the block on this one. Prairie Lakes Church originally held a public hearing to planning and zoning on November 8th of 21. Rezoning to a C5 or from a C5 to an R3 was approved approved per resolution 2021-5. On November 15th, 21, council tabled the request. Prairie Lakes Church was given the option of a special use permit at Board of Adjustment public hearing on February 2nd of 22. Special use permit was denied, and Prairie Lakes Church has been working with staff and the city attorney to develop this conditional rezoning agreement supplied in your packets.
And the conditional agreement, let me summarize it, it just will revert back to C5 if the applicant ever doesn't own that property, or use it as a church for continuous.
Correct.
Is it or and? Sorry, like if it went to someone else, and could it continue to be used as a church, or is it Prairie Lakes and they have to use it as a church?
Correct. Yes, it needs to be both of those criteria,
Okay.
or it will revert to the Office Park District.
Okay.
Correct?
Correct. It's paragraph 1A. The real estate shall be zoned R3 multifamily residential district only for so long as applicant is the legal and equitable title holder of the real estate, and the real estate is used primarily as a place of religious worship. So it's got to be both of those. Great.
John, have we done these before? Not conditional use, but specifically where the zoning would flip back to something afterwards?
We did it with the Dalen property. That's when we first did or most recently did a conditional zoning. So in order for the city council to impose any conditions on a rezoning, the applicant has to agree to those conditions in writing prior to the city council holding a public hearing. So that's why it's important that this get hashed out now, because it cannot be done after the city council's public hearing. If you did, you're doing what we're doing now and you kind of start over.
If this is considered starting over, do we need to do another public hearing?
You've approved the rezoning and that was done. So I don't feel that you do. It certainly would help if you said that your rezoning, well, if you did the rezoning over again, you'd have to hold a new public hearing. This is just the conditions, conditional agreement that the applicant has come back with now. So I don't feel you have to hold that hearing again. You've already recommended
This body's already recommended
that it be rezoned.
rezoning. Yeah.
And now you're looking at the conditional rezoning agreement.
Is anyone here from Prairie Lakes Church that would like to talk? I'm not putting you on the spot. You don't have to say anything, but if you would like to, here's your chance.
Thank you. And realize there's a full meeting, so I'll stick to the points here. As you've already indicated, that this has gone through the process, and the council identified a potential gap when it came to them, and set it aside. So they tabled this to give us a little more time to strengthen our appeal, if you will. So it's not a different request. It's just a stronger amended request, if that helps. And, thankfully there are remedies in Iowa for organizations like Prairie Lakes Church that request an exemption. As we've heard, special use permit is one, and conditional rezoning language is another. So this is a conventional strategy. This isn't something that's unusual or clever. The law provides us to do this sort of work, and really we feel like it gives the council the assurance that should we shut down or decide to sell the property, it would revert back to the commercial zone. There is no danger, in other words, of us slicing up the property and selling it off for private homes. I don't mean to be facetious. I think that was, that was the gap. And we wanted to address that, and the council gave us an opportunity to work on some language that would essentially close that and provide the right assurance that the council was looking for.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank you for your flexibility as we worked through this process. I know it took a little longer than originally
No,
anticipated.
I'm just very, very grateful. We're thrilled to be here and hope this continues to move forward.
All right, any other questions on the commission for staff or discussion?
Seems like a satisfactory agreement to me.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, great.
Can
Let's,
discussion continue?
oh, yes, absolutely, please.
So, I mean, I still have a few issues with this. I think the land use policies laid out in the comprehensive plan do say that the intent of the business park is commercial and industrial use, not residential. I don't think it gives leeway to even a temporary. And I think, you know, rezoning the apartment complex has been, for the apartment complex has been used as a justification, but I don't really think that should be, I think that was a mistake personally, and I don't think that should be justification for another one. Finally, I do just want to point out that I think Prairie Lakes has been holding services there at the property, even though the zoning hasn't been resolved. And I just find it a little odd an applicant would openly disregard city laws while also requesting special treatment.
Any other discussion? We do have a motion and a second. Let's do roll call vote. Ryan,
Yes.
Martin,
No.
Holly,
No.
Hannah,
No.
Nathan, Marla,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. All right, the next item on tonight's agenda is consider approval of a site plan for Quick Star at College Drive. Greg, I normally ask you to go first, but Travis said that I should get a word in from John as we start this off.
Sure, I'm just gonna give a little bit of procedural background here and then hand it over back to Greg and to the commission. So first off, this is not a hearing or a discussion on the on zoning. It does get into that discussion, but that's as part of the review of the site plan. The city code for C2 gives the zoning administrator the legal authority, and he's the only one with that authority to make a determination whether a use is a permitted use in C2. And he's done that. Now, there is an opportunity if people disagree with that determination to appeal that to the Board of Adjustment, which people have every right or ability to do. However, just because the zoning administrator determined that a convenience store is a permitted use in C2, that does not mean every single convenience store is allowed in a C2. That's the purpose of the site plan review process, to look at the scope of the project. And you'll take into consideration what's set out in chapter 17.36 regarding site plan review. And there's a list of, it's in a paragraph, but if you break it out, there's basically A through G considerations in 17.36.030. And then you can also look at the purpose of the C2 district. And you can also look at all other requirements of the zoning code, which is Title 17, as well as any other requirements that are in the city code for any use of land that's applicable to this project. Now, certainly the city engineer has done a thorough review of that, but you can look at that as well as part of your consideration. And I would encourage you, so there's a full record of this, to look at starting with 17.36.030, the factors that planning and zoning should consider. And that's not all of them for you to consider, but you should at a minimum look at those. And some of them might not apply, but some of them may apply. So, and in the end, P and Z basically has 4 options. They can recommend that the site plan be approved as submitted. They can recommend the site plan be approved with conditions. They can recommend the site plan be denied, or with the consent of the applicant, remand the site plan back to the applicant and or city staff for further review and or modifications, and direct that the item be placed on the agenda at a later date. But I say that you got to do that with the applicant's consent on that, because there is a 45-day window there that the P and Z has to take action on a site plan. And when I say action, it's either approve or disapprove. But ultimately, it will go to the city council for their review and approval as well.
Any questions from members on this piece?
I have 2 questions, John. First, you were pointing to the items listed in the site plan, but if you look at the intent of the site plan section, C2 district, no, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong piece. Okay, sorry. To ensure that the design and location of residential, commercial, and industrial areas will be in conformance with the zoning standards of this title. So how are we not to use zoning if that is the intent?
You certainly can, but what I would say is the city of Decorah has already said convenience stores can be in C2. And so I would urge you not to
City
say
of Decorah says that where?
there's a Casey's that's been approved and a Decorah Mart. So those are past approval by the city. Now, whether they, because they went through site plan review, it's certainly the Casey's did twice in 1990 and again in 2017. I don't know about Decorah Mart. I would have guessed at some point they went through some type of review. But that, again, that's the question of, can a convenience store be allowed in C2? It is not the question that you have tonight. Is this site plan appropriate in the C2 district and in accordance with the rest of the Decorah City Code? Two different issues. And again, you could appeal the zoning administrator's determination on that, but that's a separate action to appeal that question.
My second question is, I guess, sort of objecting or questioning, does the zoning administrator actually have that authority?
Yeah, we can, yeah, it's, I'll read it.
It seems to me there's conflicting language, that it starts out by saying only uses listed in this section may be permitted in C2, and then goes on to say, including but not limited to the following. So it's saying only these things are allowed, and then not only these things are allowed.
And similar uses as may be determined by the zoning administrator. So that's, in my opinion, where it's clear that there's going to be things that could be a similar use that's not specifically listed here. And it gives the zoning administrator the authority to say, yeah, that's similar to this use that's listed. And again, if you don't agree with it, you can appeal it. Somebody could appeal it to the Board of Adjustment.
Can I ask another question about the previous convenience stores that were approved? My understanding was that those are non-conforming uses. So do they set a precedent that we have, that those are conforming uses now?
Oh, I'm not aware. Was there a determination that those were non-conforming? I guess I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, we don't know.
I don't recall, I was on this board in 2017 when we went through the QC expansion there. I don't recall there being a discussion.
Yeah. If there was a determination, that would be relevant.
Okay. And do you remember anything about the presence of gas pumps or the gas station side of the business coming up as a part of the discussion?
I don't believe that.
Okay.
It's pretty much the same determination.
Mhm.
That it was, regardless that it was.
Well, they just tore the store down, right? The pumps were stayed the same and the site plan stayed the same.
Essentially.
So you weren't discussing that part of the plan? Like they were just doing the convenience store?
Right.
When
was
you
not
reviewed
like
it.
A brand new site. It was the same exact use.
But it would have been the same topic as you have tonight, review of a site plan to make sure it's in conformance with Title 17. So it may not have been specifically a question, but it's a requirement that the planning and zoning and the city council would have looked at to make sure that the site plan was in conformance with Title 17.
Okay. Any more questions for John?
I don't know if it's a question for John.
So my plan is to have Greg speak next, and then the commission will discuss further before we do any public comment tonight.
Okay, a little background here. Quickstar is requesting permission for a site plan approval to construct an 11,000 square foot convenience store with a car wash. The combined sites to redevelop 3.44 acres. Use is compliant with the C2 zoning ordinance, 1792 permitted uses. Particularly 1792-020 permitted uses, letter C, retail businesses. Quick Trip is a convenience store along with sales of fuel and automotive products, and it falls into the permitted uses. Jeremy with the city engineer, I know, has provided a report with some recommendations also, and if he wants to chime in, certainly can.
Do you mind holding off on a second, Jeremy? We'll get to the technical pieces if we can get through maybe our question on the zoning piece first. Greg, so I'm sorry that this meeting might be a little less structured than most, but so I have a question for you as to, you know, the determination of whether this fits the C2 zoning district. Is that something that your interpretation is open to discussion, or have you made your mind on that prior to any input from planning and zoning? I know that you're not making this decision by yourself and you've been in consult with other staff.
Yeah, looks like John wants to, he's chomping.
John,
I
you
can just
take that
jump in.
one.
Chomping at the
You
bit
almost
there.
have to ask that question without a site plan. Is
Say
it,
again?
you almost have to ask that question without seeing the site plan. Is a the question, is a convenience store allowed in C2 without seeing the site plan?
Well, we haven't seen it yet.
Well, that's what
I
I'm.
know we have it here, but we're not even to that point is what I'm.
Well, but what I'm saying is, you said this project. How did you make that determination? I would say he shouldn't be making a determination about this project. He's making a determination about could that use, could it be permitted? A convenience store, not the Quick Trip convenience store,
Yes.
but any convenience store in the C2 district. So sorry, I'm just jumping in because I want to make sure we keep the focus, and you can go into whether this convenience store is appropriate for C2 by reviewing the site plan. And I'm sorry, I'm just trying to keep it on track as far as.
Well, so, and sorry, John, maybe I should have asked you this earlier. I mean, my thought is that this particular applicant is asking for a convenience store, a gas station, and a car wash. Now, one of those uses is, I think, clearly permitted almost any commercial district within the city. A convenience store could be built almost anywhere. But within the zoning code, only car wash and gas station are mentioned in the C1 highway district, with the idea behind the highway district being that that is serving the highway public, whereas the C2 is sort of this neighborhood piece. So I guess I had asked you, you keep mentioning the convenience store, which I think is probably a permitted use, but the site plan in front of us tonight is also asking for use of a parcel within the C2 district for a gas station and a car wash, which are separate uses as defined under code. They're asking for all three, and it doesn't matter which one is primary.
Yeah, and that's a good question. If do you look at the sales? Do you look at the square footage, the footprint of what's being
I
used?
think that each of those needs to pass the test independently. Otherwise, someone could put in, I mean, this
Yeah.
is, one of the comments was you could put in a combo store with a clearly unpermitted use as long as it was under a certain number of square feet in sales
But-
as a loophole for the code, which I don't think anyone is suggesting.
Well, and those are valid arguments. And I guess what I would say is you have two choices. You can file an appeal with the Board of Adjustment because Greg's made his decision, or you can look at the site plan and take into consideration the very things you just said. And I think you can take those things into consideration with your site plan review. But the city code is clear that the zoning administrator gets the first shot to make that decision. And P and Z is not part of that blanket question. But you certainly, and this is where I said it does bleed over a little bit and get a little confusing. Consider that when you're talking about the site plan. Again, it's not just because something is a permitted use does not mean all of those permitted uses are allowed in the zoning. You could have a residential district and you could, well, I'm trying to think because residential doesn't go through a site plan review, but if it did, you could have something that's clearly residential, right? Meets the requirement. It's maybe 4 to 6 dwelling units, but there's something in that site plan, or there's multiple things in those site plan that do not meet the city code in your interpretation of it. So that's why I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get
No,
away
I think
from-
it's good. I mean, we're
Yeah.
all trying to figure out how,
I think there's a different avenue and a different forum for maybe that specific kind of question. And yeah, I mean, you could say sorry, Greg, I'm not trying to write somebody's appeal, but somebody could
You're
say to
fine.
Board of Adjustment, I'm gonna appeal this because I think the zoning administrator did not take into consideration A, B, and C. But I don't think you guys tonight really need to, that's not what you should be focused on. You should be focused on, does this site plan, and you get a kind of a second bite at the apple here. But it's not to say, it's not to appeal the zoning administrator's decision
okay.
in that regards. But you can say, I think the zoning administrator didn't take into consideration this, and this. But that's why I'm trying to get it back on site plan discussion.
Thanks for keeping us on the straight and narrow. Okay, Greg, anything else you want to add?
Oh, that's pretty much it. I don't
Okay.
know if-
Um,
Oh, I'm sorry. There's one other thing too. I know there's been some comments out there and people wondering, but some of the site plans out there, it makes it look like there's semi-traffic on site, and there is not. That's delivery only.
Delivery
That's
of
just
fuels.
delivery access. There are no diesel pumps out there for semi-traffic.
Good clarification. Okay, are we hearing from the applicant tonight?
Is here.
Thanks for letting us get through our things. Would you like to speak and present the site plan?
I'm Dax Conley with Quick Trip, Quick Star, 1626 Oak Street out of La Crosse. I would certainly answer any site plan questions that you may have, any technology terms, anything about the site plan, the delivery, the car wash. I can answer those questions for you tonight. With the car wash question, that's a great question. It's a great point. I don't know. There's a lot of communities that show a detached car wash and an attached car wash, and they do have separate zoning and separate locations that they go into. So I don't know if I know the zoning code specifically for C2, but our car wash is attached. So I don't know, Greg, if you know if there's standalone car wash to attached car wash for a site plan in those zoning districts, if there's a difference between the two.
I don't think there's a difference between the two, but I would think if it's integrated into the building, it becomes part of the building.
But certainly can answer any questions.
Okay, great, excellent, thank you. Greg, separate issue with tonight was our clock ticking. Many times we have had the option to add a public hearing to a site plan. I feel like the public is here already tonight, and so whether or not we called this a public hearing, I do think that we can allow for public comment tonight. If everyone is comfortable not having an official posted public hearing. And I'm just curious what my other commission members think.
I would argue there's benefit in a true public hearing. I mean, this was posted, Thursday. I feel like a lot of the public has not gotten, many of the people in this room became aware of it on probably Friday, but I would say it's sort of unfair to assume that everyone would know this quickly about this and know that they also would have the opportunity to speak. And, this has really galvanized our community. And I think people have strong opinions. It's important to hear from everyone, not just the people who are paying attention the last couple days. I hope that Quickstar would also see the value in hearing from all their potential neighbors, potential future neighbors. And then I personally think it would be in the best interest of everyone to delay a month till our next meeting or till a later date. So we could.
We are not open for public comments yet.
Okay.
I was saying, I think it would behoove us to delay so we can properly post a public hearing in the newspaper, the proper channels that we go through normally, and do that.
I guess that's a question for you. I mean, our code is written as such that you need to agree prior to an extension of the site plan review. And I'm curious if that would be all right.
Submitted, I think, March 10th somewhere.
That's the date we have on record, yes.
Okay, so I have, as the real estate manager, I have a due diligence process that I have to go through with my sellers. I have 2 sellers involved. I have dates to meet. I understand this hasn't been posted and had time for everybody to take a look at it and have a public hearing. I would prefer tonight that people get a chance to speak, and then I can stay on track with my sellers. And have approval or denial tonight.
Okay. Well, I
That's
mean,
just my wish.
well, no, I mean, it really is in many ways up to you. The way the code is written is that, the 45 days runs out, it will go to council before we have a chance at our next meeting. And so if you have a timeline to meet, I think that we hear from people who come tonight, and we'll make our determination at tonight's meeting.
Is there a time limit to speakers?
Yes, there will be. I'm getting to that.
Sorry.
Okay. So it's my intention to open, it's not a public hearing, public comment tonight. And since there are many folks here, I am going to limit the time of each speaker. I'm sorry, anybody on the board here? Do you guys have any other questions before I open up to public comment? Greg, do you want anything you want to get in? You want just, okay, great. Okay. So I think 3 minutes each. If you can please limit your comments to that. Please do come speak at the podium. This is your time to speak when you are at the podium. You can't shout out things from the back. please, at the beginning of your statement, give your name and your address for the record. And then just a kind of general house rules. As the chair, as a speaker, you should be addressing me. You do not need to address the applicant or to other audience members. And just please, everyone be respectful of those speaking. So, okay. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Brandon Schmidt, 107 Quarry Street, which is directly across from the proposed, I don't know what to call it. The problem, I understand the zoning. I am not a NIMBY. I understand progress happens. My biggest concern is not a convenience store. It's the car wash. Noise and light pollution. I live directly across from the proposed site. Right directly, my property overlooks the site. I have, 165 feet of frontage. I live in the Gill addition. So if anybody has a site plan, I live on lot 3, 4, and 5 of that addition. And so I'm looking over that. My property that's my front window. And the noise generated by that, the light pollution, the extra traffic, everything that's there affects me. Decreases my property value. That's not a speculation, that's a given fact. And this will affect me and my family directly. So I'm speaking more as an entity. Pretty much the car wash is my biggest concern. The car wash, I did have the pleasure of hearing the street sweeper this morning, which I do appreciate, having my street swept on occasion, but that is the noise that you will hear when the car wash is running. I'm a licensed master plumber, or was. I'm familiar with pumps, compressors. I'm also an electrician. I'm familiar with lighting, how all that stuff works and the noise it makes. So it will be a lot of extra noise for me. It's looking over my property, and I'm not sure whose jurisdiction it comes down to, but hopefully there's going to be some abatement, lighting as far as something that casts downward, something that's not shining in my window, and that everybody takes that into consideration. The car wash is really something that I have listened to the car wash out on the.
Brandon, I think we've
thank
got
you.
your summary.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
No, thank you.
That's good. Thank you for your time and appreciate your attention.
My name is Nate Preuss, 716 West Main Street. I just wanted to say I'm a truck driver, and I've been at, I feel like many quick trips in Quick Stars in the upper Midwest. And this one, just looking at the site plan briefly, is just about as big as they get. And I've never seen one this big in a thickly settled residential area. And so part of what I wanted to express is just confusion over that site decision. But two other quick points. One, I believe when talking about the existing convenience stores on College Drive, I don't know if it was Hannah, you mentioned they might be non-conforming. They're grandfathered, I believe. They predate the zoning code, both of them. And there was that time when Casey's was renovated, but I think, Joel, as you said, the pumps remain the same, the layout remained the same. So those are grandfathered convenience stores there. And to that point as well, There's nothing, the fact that the council and P and Z reviewed a new site plan when Casey's was renovated and chose not to enforce the zoning code, chose not to, if we're saying that C2 doesn't permit gas stations, the fact that the council chose not to enforce that provision at one point when the site plan came in shouldn't mean that a future P and Z or a future council can't choose to enforce the idea that C2 does not permit gas stations. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing, similar uses that Greg mentions were two. One was the, so what is this site plan going to be similar to that allows it to be placed in C2? One was automotive, sales and service, repair, that kind of thing. I think it's pretty clear what that's referring to. It's referring to dealerships, auto repair, that kind of thing. This isn't that. And then the second thing is retail business, which is extremely broad. So obviously you're not going to permit any retail business in C2. You're not going to put a Costco in C2. So that's why the code specifies underneath that lots of different examples of the kinds of retail uses and other uses that you can have there. And that's where it's obvious that gas station is a specialized use. C2 does not enumerate it. It's mentioned in C1. So it seems abundantly clear that, using retail business as a similar use is not enough. It's too vague. You need to go down, look at the items within C2 that are listed, and gas station isn't there. It's in C1. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Anyone else? You guys can just line up because I think we'd like to keep you moving through as we can. So if someone would like come forward and if someone would just come right behind him, we can cut down on our time in between. I know that 3 minutes is really short, but I anticipate that there's a lot of people speaking tonight. So I really do ask that you keep to it.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
My name is John Snyder. I live at 1558 Manawa Trail Road in Decorah. It sounds like in a lot of ways, this is a done deal in one form or another. So I hope you city officials and the board will consider this as a plea from the heart. Almost 6 months ago, many of us in this community were surprised by the news of Quickstar's sudden move to develop a site on College Avenue. It's always been a nondescript strip, a bit of an eyesore. And so that may be why Quickstar's move went unnoticed. But what has also gone unnoticed, and likely for many years, by mayors, city planners, P&Z boards, and city councils, is that once you go behind the strip of buildings and stand on the dike and look east, the location has one of the more spectacular scenic views as one can find in Decorah, one with the city nestled in a bend of the Upper Iowa River and with the bluffs overlooking. A hidden gem, in other words. Just think of all the possibilities that this location might be developed into once the existing buildings were removed. My own personal vision can see planting trees to develop a small park, to widen out the dike, put in some nice park benches. Oh my, what a gorgeous view. It could be a trailhead for bikers, for walkers, a vision that this town is more and more embracing, and how simply it could be achieved. So to be told by a city official that not much can be done, and to hear from you that really much can be done regarding the complexity of zoning laws and the fact that it's already been zoned in such a way. My comment to you, not only to you who sit on this board, but to other city officials, is that I think you do have the power in this decision-making process to change things. Yes, I fully admit to being naive and ignorant about zoning regulations, but you have opened up this meeting for public comments, and that is a recognition that we as a community do have a say in these matters. We do have power. Commercial and industrial growth has never been given a free pass to development. This has been demonstrated numerous times in Decorah's past, most recently regarding Menard's plans to locate a store in Decorah. For me, the question at hand, though, is pretty straightforward. How do we see our small town of Decorah, one of the best small towns in America, according to various polls, growing into the future? For one thing, it's highly doubtful if gasoline is our future. It doesn't sound like it. Ford Motor Company is predicting that over 50% of their sales will be all electric in 8 years. That's the future. Thank you.
Just gonna start a timer because I'm not good at stopping myself. I want to speak to you as a pedestrian, walking down Quarry Street to access. Maya, yeah, my name is Maya Usher Rasmussen, and I live at 1850 Canoe Valley Road. So I'm speaking to you as a pedestrian, walking down Quarry Street to access Ice Cave Road, and Dunning Springs Park already feels dangerous. And it's a very popular park for people walking from town to access there in both directions. And there's no sidewalk provided there, and the increase of traffic could prove dangerous to kids and people of all ages. And additionally, as a motorist driving to Dunning Springs, parking there is already limited, and coming in and out of Quarry Street and Ice Cave Road already feels like a dangerous passing zone. And so the addition of a gas station, car wash, convenience store feels like an intense increase of traffic in that area that could cause issues for both motorists and pedestrians. Thank you.
My name is Bailey Lutz. I also live at 1850 Canoe Valley Road. I would love to echo all of my fellow commentators as to their various concerns. I too agree that the interpretation of the zoning code has been overly generous in a number of ways. I would like to echo that the addition of a high traffic entity is incredibly dangerous to a number of individuals. It's very detrimental to the well-being and lifestyle of existing residents in that area, and the further detriment to the natural beauty that Decorah has to offer so many people. And I would urge officials in any capacity to continue pursuing green spaces versus concrete. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Morris, 2530 235th Avenue. I echo everyone's sentiments so far, and also just want to add, why do we need another gas station right in the middle of town? There's plenty of gas stations. It's like John said, one of the most beautiful river access points. And I moved here 7 years ago. Decorah is a beautiful place with the beautiful nature and a lot of interesting like local businesses and things that bring in tourists, which really give it, income and probably help the city make money. I just don't also understand why the city's bending over backwards to help Quickstar. They could be helping local people start businesses where we actually live here and we shop here. It just seems like a strange decision that I can't quite wrap my head around, and probably not making like a great point, but I just wanted to make sure I got up here and said, I don't think it's needed. And it's not a convenience store. It's a gas station and a car wash, and it's going to impact people's lives, and Quickstar's not going to have to be there to deal with it. So that's my opinion, and thank you for your time. All right.
Hello, everyone. I'm Leroy, 409 Day Street, right here in Decorah. And I just like Maya said, like Bailey said, like John said, like Elizabeth just said, this is the most redundant thing I've ever heard of. Another gas station, another Quickstar. Like, do we really need this when what brings people to this town is its beauty, is its access, is a gas station really providing that in any sort of feasible way? I don't think so. I think it's going to be an eyesore. And I think it's, like I said, that one word, redundant. There's two over there. one with the best owner in town, Craig. Shout out Craig. He's amazing. And if you open a quick start here, that's going to be detrimental to his business and that's going to make him leave. And I don't want that. Nobody wants that. So please, no quick start. Thank you.
Hello, Cody Whittle, 607 East Main Street. Again, echoing everything that everybody says. I also work at Pulpit Rock Brewery, and I talk to a lot of people that come to town for tourism and people that love Decorah because of its charm and its personality. And I think by having an entity come to town and have the third location, it just takes away from the other personalities that are in town. Like the landing just went up and is just now kind of starting to get through the COVID time period. They just got it open when COVID hit. And so they've kind of survived that. Also, Craig at Decorah Mart is awesome and his family. And I think that both of those entities would be harmed by a Quick Star coming in right across the street that nobody knows Quick Star. Quick Star doesn't have a personality. They're not a local person. They're just it doesn't coincide with the charm that people come to Decorah for. And I think that it would be more detrimental. And as people have said before, there's lots of other community oriented things that could go in this space as opposed to a gas station right in the middle of town. So I think in terms of personality, character, and charm, I think that there are much better options than the third Quick Star in town. Thank you.
My name is Brittany Todd. I live at 303 Decorah Avenue. I am a future planner, and so some of my points are maybe very far down the road. But one being that I read this morning that they would like to have a digital sign, which currently is not allowed. And if that does get passed, are we ready for that entire strip to become digital signs? And are we ready to approve all of the other businesses on that path and perhaps into downtown having that same request maybe years down the road, but it will most likely still happen to anybody else who's coming into town. That's currently something we don't see here. It's unique to our downtown. We have a historic district, and I feel like bringing the historic the other direction instead of bringing modernization toward the downtown benefits the entire community in that regard. Another point I would like to give is if any of you have ever driven on that road from 7:45 a.m. to 8:05 a.m. on any school day, it is a nightmare. I haven't had to drop a child off in that direction for a few years now, but I will start that again this fall. And honestly, we leave for school intentionally a couple minutes late because we get there at the exact same time as if we leave 15 minutes early. It is impossible with the light there to hit the traffic just right and have cross traffic going across College Drive. I don't want to look back on this meeting and say, why didn't we do something? Because something has happened to someone's child during drop off. It seems dramatic. We've lost a lot of kids in this community recently. And this feels like unless there is a way to safely get cars in and out of that parking lot, I just highly recommend that anybody who is part of that plan, I'm willing to sit down and chat with them as a parent, go on that road from 7:45 to 8:05 and say that having increased traffic is not going to affect the safety of families going across that road on a daily basis. I also own two of the same business in town. Having three seems a bit redundant. I know exactly what that's like, nowhere near to the scale of what this is going to be, but I would be more than happy to sit down with the community, even if it meant delaying the sale of the property that I would like to build on, to hear what the community that I'm trying to expand in actually wants. Thank you.
I'm Laura Schatzer. I live at 401 Leif Erikson Drive, which is over on the west side. I live about a block and a half away from the intersection. where the proposed Quick Star would be going in. And I'm an avid runner, and I know that there are a lot of people in our community who value walking and biking and running. And that Quarry Road area that connects to Ice Cave Road and Dunning Springs and all of the hiking trails up there is a really frequented pedestrian area, as well as for cars, as other people have mentioned. So I actually drive a lot in our current economy. I'm a chaplain. I drive to La Crosse 4 days a week. So I fill up my car a lot. I've never had a problem having to wait. There's always plenty of spots at the Casey's and Decorah Mart right there in my neighborhood already. And I'm really concerned about the size of this project, the scale, and the traffic that it would bring to that area for just everybody's safety, as other people have mentioned, and the congestion for people, in the summer, that area, people visiting Dunning Springs, it already gets really crowded, as anybody who's been there in the summer when the tourists come knows.
My name is Ann Mansfield. I live at 203 Quarry Street. Actually, I live at Dunning Springs. I feel like this whole decision is really being rushed, and I would like you as members of the P&Z Commission to really think about the tempo here is way too fast. We have some issues that have not been addressed. All the people before me have talked about the pedestrian traffic on Quarry Street. I'm good friends with everybody from Park and Rec and every police officer. And everyone is doing their very best, but the traffic, the pedestrian, biking, and family traffic out there has increased way more than 20-fold in the pandemic. I'm probably way off. If there's somebody in the room that has the numbers, I'd like to know. So, I mean, we have not addressed the car and pedestrian traffic coming down Quarry Street to Dunning Springs. And we've put a lot of Band-Aids on and a lot of great people working on it, but it needs to be addressed. I would like to tag on to the comment made. There are times of the day right now when we cannot get out of Quarry Street onto College Drive. In fact, I was stopped by Dan Marks, the sheriff, good friend, telling me that I pulled out too fast. And I felt like I had waited for like nearly 10 minutes just to get onto College Drive. And actually, for those of you know me, most of my trips downtown are on foot. So, and for that reason, but I mean, that issue has not been resolved. I will want to say there's a number of people in the room that have been in long time conversations about a vision for that strip. I was the coordinator for the Northeast Iowa Food and Fitness Initiative, and those discussions go back to 1997. Really thinking about how we make that whole section from the bridge going, up College Drive, just more inviting, more green, more pedestrian and biking friendly. And it's a funnel. And we've had fits and starts with kind of getting this vision. And I feel like, a rush decision on a quick start is just going to, really, we're not going to get anywhere with that. And the last point I'd like to make is for those of you who have not had the privilege of going behind and standing on the dike and taking a look at that view, I'm fortunate I get to see it many times every day, and it is amazing. And it's the idea that there would be just a huge store and footprint in front of that, to me is a shame. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Megan. I live on 409 Day Street. I just wanted to reiterate some points. One of them being that if the Quick Trip and the sign is right on that corner, right across from Trout Run Trail and the river, which I would say are one of the bigger attractions. It's also an exit point for those trails for people to visit town who are biking, go to Pulpit Rock Brewing, and seeing a Quick Trip right across from that is just, I think, not really what people are using those facilities for. And And I also think that putting a quick trip there would separate the school more from town. Right now, there's a big separation. There's nothing really as a midway point other than the landing and pulpit. So putting a quick trip there right across from another community convenience store and gas station would then separate the community even more from them not using community facilities. I think having a park there and appreciating that view or something to really like join the community together is just a better way to go about using this space. Yeah, thank you.
My name is Julie Fisher. I live at 712 West Main in Decorah. And I would like to reiterate what Ann had to say, that making a decision on the short term without hearing all of the concerns of the community is really a mistake. We don't have very much developable land in this town, and we have a lot of needs, a lot of really important needs that need to be addressed and talked about and figured out. So this property could address one of the real needs that we have. It's out of scale. The site plan is way out of scale for our community. It would change the whole character of things, not to speak of the signage that might go in also. Our greatest calling card here, as everybody knows, is the out of doors, people coming here to visit and to sit outside and to ride their bikes. And now we have the landing, a wonderful, attractive place. We have the barbecue place that also has some seating outside that people can sit outside and talk. And if we have a lot more traffic on that road, that's going to interrupt that whole thing. We visited a small community not too long ago, and we thought, oh, this is great. We'll just get our ice cream cone and sit down on the sideline. And in came the motorbikes and all kinds of things, and you couldn't hear yourself talk, or think even. So my concern is that we get that kind of an atmosphere going on that road, and we've already heard the concerns about the traffic. And then we'd have people turning different directions left into the line of traffic. We need to have a real study of what would go on there for at least, So I am very much against this. I like the quick stars. I like the ones that we have here. I like Decorah Martin. I use them all, but this would be too big, and I would not use it. I would, stand out front with a sign or something and say, go there. But no, I hope we don't do this. And you do have power. You do have the power to make these decisions. So let's not be scared off by something else. Thank you very much.
I'm Mona Nelson. I live at 505 Leif Erikson Drive. So in the vicinity of College Drive and this area, and I've lived there over 30 years. My objection is just practicality. You're trying to squeeze this particular project would squeeze something into limited space that is already overcrowded, both traffic wise, pedestrian wise. And I know previous councils have looked at how do you fix that, just trying to cross from one side of the street to the other. And there's been traffic lights talked about, but it is really a condensed area. The other issue that was before some city discussion not too long ago was the limited parking space for the already many existing local businesses in that area. And I was a longtime patron of Heirloom. They moved because of parking limits and not being able to handle their patrons. And at that time, even if their patrons parked across the street in this vicinity, they couldn't get across the 4-lane traffic area. So back up, slow down, and think about how we use it and in a practical way, because this, if it goes forward, it's not going to alleviate the already existing traffic issues, parking spaces, and it'll be back on the city table of now what do we do about it? So your patience and
input from the public, I think is very critical. Thank you.
My name is Wayne Wast. I live at 207 Ohio Street. We are dealing with greed. Period. Let's not feed any more greed from Quick Trip. Thank you.
My name is Russell Novak, 2036 Grandview Road. I guess a lot of pieces we missed here are additional tax revenue brought to us by Quickstar, additional great careers of people. Every time I walked into Quickstar, everyone's smiling. The jobs they provide us, they're substantial jobs that pay tax dollars in our community. The current facilities that we're looking at, they're getting to the point of being an eyesore. The buildings down there, and if we don't allow some sort of development, and I love the ideas that the community's brought, but we're looking at a property worth well over $1 million. Now, a park, is the city want to write a check out for $1 million to put a park in and do that? I mean, that's real money. The buildings that are there, the tax, I'm guessing the tax basis will double. The new project here, they aren't asking for tax abatement or anything else from this community. They're going to provide tax dollars. We want to build a new school. What about local option sales tax that are going to be provided for us? I'm guessing this Quickstar will bring in $5, $6, $7, $10 million a year in sales, that we're going to have sales tax dollars coming in to put a school, to put teachers in. So thank you for your time.
My name is Cy Nelson, 505 Leaf Erickson Drive. I think Quickstar has been a good corporate citizen for our community. They have given donations to food pantry. I picked up both locations myself. I will continue to support Quickstar, Quick Trip in our town and its 2 locations. Do not put a third one. They're a good corporate citizen for 2, but do not do the third.
Speak from the public. We are going to close the public comment section of the meeting. Thank you for all your comments. Guys, give me a second to double check my notes that I wrote here as far as keeping this train running in order. Jeremy, I think we're ready to hear from you on some technical aspects of the site plan.
All right, yeah, thank you. So I'll preface this by saying our review, as Joel mentioned, is on the technical components of how the site plan meets the city code requirements for the site itself. You have a letter in front of you outlining a number of items that we had noted. I can go through those. I maybe will highlight a couple of the more major ones. It was referenced a reference was made to an electronic digital sign. That is correct. Our code does not allow those. So if that is a path that the applicant would like to pursue, that variance request would need to be made to the Board of Adjustment for review and consideration. Another item was in regards to the levee setback. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers requires us to maintain a 15-foot setback from the toe of the slope of the levee. There were a few items, trees, picnic tables shown within that, as well as some silt fence that we would need to have relocated out of that setback. A couple items, the sidewalk. These are more recommendations from our office, referencing a couple of the concerns with the pedestrian vehicle interactions. Not proposing to change any existing sidewalks currently. Our recommendation would be that the sidewalks shift back to the right-of-way line, as our code requires for sidewalks. We have actually put together a brief or a little concept for how that could work, which I can provide with you as well. Similarly with the driveway on College Drive, we would like to at least discuss the possibility of shifting that to the south to line up with Iowa Avenue. We feel that would provide a safer intersection, pseudo intersection, as opposed to being offset with the drive. There are a number of easements that we as a city need to obtain for this property or need to maintain or ensure that are kept throughout the project. I mentioned the 15 feet from the toe of the slope of the river. We also have a couple of culverts in the area that we would like to maintain an easement to across this property to maintain those culverts, number 5 and number 4. Basically, number 4 is the one behind Pizza Ranch. Number 5 is the one behind this property. And we also have a storm sewer on Quarry Street, which crosses this property. So number of easements that we would recommend that the city obtain from the applicant. And I think lastly is the stormwater management plan. The current plan does not meet our requirements for detention. And so we would require that the basin be enlarged to meet our 25 and 50-year post-development, those runoff rates for those storm events. A couple of other minor items that we're missing on the stormwater management plan. So those are probably the main items that we noted in our review. Again, all of these we feel can be remedied to provide a compliant site plan, but we would recommend that any approval of the site plan be contingent upon the items noted in our review.
Any questions for staff?
I have a specific question for Jeremy about the FEMA flood maps. I've heard bits and pieces about it. Could you elaborate on it and also maybe explain what your recommendation would be there?
Yeah, so that was another item in our review. So these are, to be clear, these are the preliminary maps, right? So they're not official. But the preliminary maps for the community include what are called interior ponding areas. So these are areas actually outside the levee that have been modeled during certain storm events to flood. Shallow flooding, but flooding nonetheless. So this property includes some interior ponding areas on the preliminary map. So they're not official yet, but we do note that in our review, just so for one, the applicant is aware. I would note that the building does not appear to be in the ponding area and that the grading for the areas that appears similar to what's there today. So that's a pretty back of the envelope rough analysis in terms of impact. But again, having it be a preliminary map, we don't feel there's a lot we can require at this point, but more just a notification to both parties that this has been modeled to potentially have flooding issues if a certain storm event arises.
Jeremy, can you, I mean, the stormwater management piece is still new to us, or I think, I mean, because it's new to the city. Can you elaborate a little bit on, because I'm not an engineer, does the pond need to be 10% bigger, or does it need to be significantly larger than that in order to meet the criteria?
I would say not significantly larger. So yeah, without getting too much.
I
into
won't
the
hold you to
technical
the number,
details,
it's
but
fine.
yeah, not 50% larger, but I'd say probably in the 15 to 20% larger.
Okay.
Yes. Again, that's just
Sure.
rough.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, from members or staff?
I make a motion that we approve the site plan contingent upon the application addressing the items mentioned in Jeremy's document dated April 5, 22.
Can we have some more time for discussion?
We can certainly discuss. Does anyone want to second the motion?
I second.
Okay. Okay. All right. Discussion among members.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this site plan is completely inappropriate for the C2 zone. I don't think the scale of this project serves the neighborhood. I think it's meant to serve highway traffic, which, as we've heard from many community members, would be completely unwelcome and frankly dangerous in this area. I think a convenience store, if that's what we were talking about, would be a different matter, but the gas pumps and the car wash don't, to me, seem to be, should not be allowed in the C2 area. I think the intent of that is to serve the neighborhood, and I think residents of the west side would be extremely negatively impacted by this site plan being approved. So those are my main concerns. I think light pollution and effects on the natural resources that are right in its back door should be concerning to all residents of Decorah, and would negatively impact attracting visitors and future residents who might be pulled here by what makes this town different.
I wanted to say that I think that the tax base that it will provide is something to strongly consider because, I'm sorry, I'm not on. Sorry, because, thank you.
Yeah,
It is-
okay.
sorry. The tax base is something important we need to consider in order to accomplish some of the projects that have been talked about, put forward, the parks, the seating areas and stuff like that. We need money to be able to afford those because we don't unfortunately have a money tree that I'm aware of. And I think this is a way to a step forward through the revenue it would provide, and it would draw people in. And maybe we could address then through the tax base, it would increase some of the issues in that area. And I'm certainly not educated to know enough what that could be, but it seems like having a strong tax base for the area would be an incentive in order to be able to channel the development in the way we want to and be able to afford it. It comes with a price tag, and that's one way to do it. And a lot of things are convenient at quick stars that are nice for people to walk to get and grab, but there is convenience there as well. And if you look at the sites, there's a lot of nice, at least on the paper, there's a lot of nice landscaping that goes in effect, as well as the benches and stuff that were mentioned that need to be moved back from the levee because of the 15-foot easement. There is that included in it at least as well. So people can enjoy the view by sitting at provided picnic tables and stuff and looking at it.
Can I just say, I mean, I understand the need for a strong tax base, but we have areas in the city that are specifically zoned for projects like this. The C1 district is specifically zoned for a massive highway scale gas station to serve highway traffic and bring in that revenue for the city. I think putting it in the C2 district is really unfair to residents who live there and around that area. The C2 district is meant to serve the neighborhood. And I think that, is it really worth it to get the money from this project to negatively affect current residents and future residents and keep any, I mean, we could have a myriad of local businesses and housing in that area that will be prevented from being there because of this one massive quick star, sorry.
I think it's been a pretty emotional night here. I also think if we are going strictly off site plan, if that is what we are voting on, I think it meets all the requirements, except for a few here contingent on staff recommendations. I'll also say we've got 2 quick stars in town. They seem to do a good job of everything's clean, tidy. I would say they're kind of a model citizen. So I think this is a no-brainer in my opinion.
We can keep discussing, but I do want to make sure that all our members are making sure that they're voting on this based on the criteria that it's in front of it.
I do have actually, I think, a couple of questions for Jeremy still. So it has to do with the sidewalks. You mentioned that there was some discussion of moving the sidewalk back to the right of way.
Yeah, I have a map. You want to look at it?
That'd be great.
I did walk over there the other day. It's pretty miserable to walk on after that. So that seems like a big improvement to me. That's my question. It looks like it's answered here. Is if that would extend to the north side of the site? Well, yeah.
So what Jeremy has shown here for us is a mock-up of sidewalks at the lot line as required per code. with a little bit of transition to both Quarry Street as well as College Drive in front of
Yeah,
Pizza
give me one
Ranch.
moment and I'll pull it up here so everybody, as well as we can see anyway.
And he's also showing, Jeremy, I'm just vamping for your time as you
Perfect,
get it
thank
in
you.
front for people. He's also showing, again, this is a sketch mock-up by him and his staff of moving the driveway as it enters off of College Drive so that it would be perpendicular to Iowa, which is the street between, I believe that's Iowa Ave, between Decorah Mart and Don's Towing, so that that would function as a full, complete intersection, which would cause a little less confusion, certainly with traffic. And has shown two potential areas for a crosswalk. There is a long, long space between Locust Road and Fifth Avenue Bridge without a proper place to cross College Drive.
Yeah, thank you, Joel. So summarized well, for those of you familiar with the area, the sidewalk currently is on the back of the curb. And then it's actually parking lot. There's no delineation, no grass boulevard. And so we would really like to see, again, if this moves forward, that sidewalk be pushed back to the right-of-way line. So there's a lot going on here. I apologize, but essentially what, if you can see my cursor, this is the current sidewalk, these dashed black lines. We would like to propose to move it back to these pink lines here. And it provides a boulevard of about, I think it was about 18 or 19 feet between the sidewalk and the street. So we'd like to do the same thing on Quarry Street, or we'd recommend that we at least have those discussions. Not as much of a boulevard there, but similar concept where we'd have a grass boulevard separation between the sidewalk and the street. And then if we just have a couple of potential crosswalks shown, that's these dash lines crossing College Drive. And then as Joel mentioned, the light blue is potential relocation of the drive. So the current drive is these black lines here. We'd propose that potentially looking at shifting it south so that it lines up with Iowa Avenue. In general, we like to see intersections that are lined up with each other and not offset. And this is not a true four-way intersection, but in our minds, it's kind of a pseudo intersection with the amount of traffic we would expect to see. So these are just some thoughts, some concepts from our staff on ways to potentially improve some of the safety pedestrian vehicle interactions.
And that wouldn't involve relocating a utility box.
It would. So this is, again, it looks easy. It's easy on paper, right? But there is a utility pole and a fire hydrant if we were to relocate the driveway, and possibly another utility pole on Quarry Street. So that would be conversations we need to have with utility providers. So yeah, not easy necessarily, but we feel feasible. And that was really the goal of this exercise, was to see if it was even possible to fit this in a different way.
And was the applicant pretty amenable to
We haven't discussed this in great detail. I'll be honest. We did talk about the sidewalk relocation, and I don't believe there was any objection there. I'll let Dak speak to that. I don't know that they would be an objection to the driveway. I believe they relocated there because of that utility pole and the difficulties with a private entity trying to get a utility pole moved. So I don't know. Dax has just seen it for the first time probably today too, so I don't want to speak on their behalf.
Yeah, I'm glad you caught that. Yeah, does that sound like something that you think that Quickstar would be amenable?
Absolutely. Working through with staff. Our goal was, picking up Roscoe's was to get the driveway as far south as we can to be able to line up with Iowa. So all of those things, stormwater management, we'd have the opportunity, if we can't enlarge the pond, to go underground as well. So we have capabilities to go and down underneath. We are all curb and gutter, so we control all of the pervious space on our site to get to that and drive it to the pond. We do like to have our own detention ponds on site for any top spillage. Anything that were to happen catastrophically, we can push that to the site. We can remediate on our own and get it taken care of ASAP. An underground detention would allow for that too. So if we do have trouble meeting that green space requirement for detention, we can go on the ground. Couple things for the commission to consider as well, listening to the folks. That's why I'm here today. Things that we can do to help. We can limit car wash hours, right? We can go 8 to 10, we can go 8 to 9. We can limit those car wash hours. We are 90-degree angled light. We don't have any light pollution outside of our property lines that we're presenting today. There's 0 looms outside of that. So it's all directional lighting. It's all taken care of on the site. The monitors on the pump, those can be turned off at a certain time at night. It's all things that can be considered by the commission to give recommendation to the city council to say, the zoning we question, there is a neighborhood there. Can they turn their pump TVs off at 9 o'clock at night? Can they turn the car wash off and not be operational after 9 o'clock at night? Those are things that we would do for the neighborhood, things we would consider, things for your commission to consider making those recommendations. So we're all ears. We want to be good neighbors. We really do.
And how about the digital sign? Is that something that is?
Yeah. So there's a disconnect between our sign people and Scott Zelo that puts in our application. We knew that there wasn't a digital sign on College Drive, so we've eliminated that. And I don't know if he's put in his new application yet or not, but we certainly are not going to ask for a digital sign.
I do.
Good.
Oh, sorry. Actually, I think this is also mentioned in Jeremy's letter, but the trash enclosure and the underground storage tanks. It seemed there was some confusion about labeling. I'm just trying to understand where the trash enclosure will go, as well as the location of the storage tanks.
The storage tanks were on the south side to where Roscoe's would sit today, in that drive aisle, driveway. And yeah,
I think it said trash enclosure. It was labeled that way, but okay. Yep. Okay. And then, so then where would the trash enclosure go?
I think we have it in site plan in front of me here. The trash enclosure is between the store and the car wash. So as you go around, that gray area here is our delivery area. And behind that is our trash closure. So that's got 3 sides of brick, and then the front is full screened with a gate to allow for. So be between the store and the car wash.
Is that in the rendering too, or is that just in the?
Sorry.
Typically
I
don't.
see. Yep. Okay. It's on there.
Right.
Thank you.
How's that make you feel, Nathan? Questions about the sidewalk be answered?
Yeah, questions about the sidewalk answered. I think for me, the lighting was a huge issue on this one. And I think, I don't know, it is what it is on this site plan. I guess that's something I maybe forgot about. And a little more in depth there while we had the applicant at the podium. But I think that with regard to traffic, that's more of the city's issue in terms of dealing with traffic flow on the street. I don't think that's as problematic as, or I don't think that fits within the scope of this review. You know, I was a little skeptical about the initial determination of the zoning, but I think a close reading of our zoning code to me, it does indicate that I think Greg is correct in this. That this is probably in line with both C2 and with existing uses in the neighborhood. I don't think that it necessarily C2 zoning is exactly fits as it is written with a lot of the vision that folks may have for this street. So I think long term, the conversation really needs to be about what we want this corridor to look like and how we might want to update C2 zoning. I think some of that ambiguity with this particular site plan and the C2 was also due to the fact that our gas station definition is, it sounds to me like it's written for Bob's and not for a modern convenience store. So I think that taking a look at some of those definitions might be in order. We also don't define the term convenience store, so that does introduce a lot more there.
Okay.
It's a tough site, but you know, right now we have half abandoned grocery store. So.
Any other discussion on the members?
I just want to follow up. You'd mentioned the traffic, it sort of not being the applicant's problem, how to handle the traffic. And I guess, well, that's true. What I would really hate to see is this big development goes in, it's drawing in all this traffic from the highway, from across town. It's adding all this congestion. The city says, oh, shoot, we need to do something about this. We need to rip up all of College Drive and redo all this. And it's gonna cost millions of dollars because we okayed this development. So I have a lot of concerns about that. I think, additionally, I just want to kind of go into some of my traffic concerns. I think, like I said, I think this is going to draw in traffic from Highway 52, from within town. It's not just going to be neighborhood. So we're going to see increased traffic. I think looking at the intersection of College Drive, North Street, and Locust, I think that's a really important one. Because you're going to have cars turning out from Quick Trip, oftentimes going north. Now, the Iowa DOT did a traffic count in 2017, and they've shown us every direction that all these cars turn. Of the northbound cars, 61% need to be in the left lane because they're going to go straight or they're going to turn left. So that means when someone turns out from Quick Trip, depending on the exit, at least based on my measurements, which don't include the change in the driveway, they have about those 60% of people would have 90 to 140 yards to merge into the left lane. Now that's a short distance. You're going to have increased traffic. I think we're going to see increased accidents, especially when you also consider the fact that, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but when you're driving up there, oftentimes people in the right lane who are not familiar with the area do not realize you can't go straight. So at the last minute, they merge left. So I think we're going to see this increase of accidents there. Additionally, if you've ever tried to cross as a pedestrian or as a cyclist at Locust, you feel like you're taking your life into your own hands. This is, it's a four-way stop.
Can we make sure that we can hear each other up here, please? Thanks.
It's a four-way stop, but people aren't stopping for you. They just stop and they go and they stop and they go, and you have to run out in front of traffic. So I think at that specific intersection, it's going to be difficult. People are going to get injured. There are going to be accidents. People will get hit. I want to echo the resident that lived on Quarry Street's sentiment too of traffic on Quarry Street, which is already bad. I believe that will get worse. Finally, just to echo the growth in pedestrian and cyclist traffic we've been seeing since COVID, we need to consider this. And the comprehensive plan already considers this. It tells us to prioritize safety for non-motorized forms of transportation, such as walking and biking throughout the city. Additionally, it also says general highway related services, which is what I would consider this, large bulk commercial uses should belong on Highway 9 in the Decorah Business Park and in the Freeport areas. Finally, just to cap it off on the sort of the walking and biking, also if you look at our city's sustainability goals. Two of the main goals are transportation, on the transportation side, increase the amount of walking and biking in Decorah, and on economic development, support local products and business and services. So it's really hard to increase local biking and walking when it becomes unsafe for pedestrians and bikers to do so.
I'd like to say that the proposed improvements of the sidewalks are a huge improvement, and that would address some of the concerns with the walking and biking. And the moving of the driveway also seems to address that as well. I think that that would be a huge improvement to that area. As someone mentioned, it's an eyesore now, and this is a bigger improvement to what it'll look more attractive.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of what you said about how miserable college is to bike or walk or even drive on. But again, I don't see how, I don't see that as grounds to deny the redevelopment of property. I mean, that the city did not reconfigure significantly the intersection at College and Locust when Locust was rebuilt. And that really precludes, for example, reducing College Drive to 2 lanes and a center turn lane. We can't do that because it's stacked. And because they have that 4-way stop. So, we're working with a pretty limited set of options with this. I think we all are pretty miserable if we're on foot on College Drive or biking on College Drive. But there are ways that the city can mitigate that, but that's outside of the scope of this discussion. The one thing that does intersect with this site plan is a big improvement in the sidewalk, getting it away from the street, getting it away from the curb, moving it inward to the right of way with a boulevard. That is what it is.
I mean, I think the question is, with this specific site plan, allowing a gas station and a car wash as opposed to just a convenience store in this area, and what that will do to the traffic. I mean, that is making an allowance, in my opinion, to change what we intend in the C2 area. And I think the negative impact, both financially and safety wise for this area, overrides the small improvements that we might see because of this parcel getting developed, which I agree we all want. We all want it to be redeveloped. We all want this area to become more walkable, more pedestrian friendly, safer to drive on. But I really think, looking just at the scope and the size of it as well, it's not appropriate for the C2 zone or this parcel in general. And I don't see how we don't see more traffic and more accidents because of 20 gas pumps getting put here.
There certainly is an issue of scale at the site. So, but maybe we've discussed enough tonight. There is a motion on the floor.
Can I make one more thing
Yes.
just about traffic? I think Nathan said that traffic seemed out of the scope of the site plan as a consideration. And I would entirely disagree. I think if you look at code, look at the intent of site plans to assure the design of residential, commercial, industrial areas will be in conformance with zoning standards of this title and are properly related to and in harmony with the existing and future residential, businesses, and industrial development of the city. I think that shows that we need to look at not just this particular site plan and the individual lines, but also how it fits into this neighborhood. And the impact on traffic is you can't separate those. It's one and the same.
I think it's time for us to vote. So there is a motion to approve the site plan with the fixes, I guess, enumerated in this engineer's comments, as well as a rough sketch here, kind of proposing there an illustration of what things could look like with the driveway that the city is willing to work with in terms of utility location, and ensuring that the sidewalks meet the criteria of the code as it's set out. Any last words? Okay. All right, Brian,
Yes.
Martin,
No.
Holly,
Yes.
Anna,
No.
Nathan,
Yes.
Marla,
Yes.
and I will vote no. Okay. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. We do have more to discuss, so if you are going to leave, please do so quietly so we can continue. Item number 6 is to set a date for a public hearing on the design criteria code amendments. You guys want to take a break for, does anyone need to step out a sec while the room clears? Yeah, okay, we're gonna take a recess. Go for it. Right down the hall right here. And well, to the left of them, the ladies around, like, all to the glass at the front.
Thank you.
I think either way, it would be cool to see something figured out was done in spring. How that's currently stands.
Like, I really like the discussion about how.
And I think adding crosswalks would be huge, but yeah, even so, it's, when you have people coming on their bikes down Prairie Street to turn on College Drive, it's just like terrifying. Yeah.
And I.
Well, right, you know, there aren't areas on the map, but C2, and it's, I think an interesting question of what really, yeah, what do we want that to serve, you know, what purpose?
Something like this comes along. My opinion is like this.
Okay, just thank you, we're gonna be back on official business now, so thanks for giving us time to. Great, do you want to tell us the next item on this chapter? Something unrelated tonight. I noticed looking. So it's, I'm sorry, it's really chapter. So this is entitled 15. Way the city right now. It had a big for requests for variances. It gives the authority for council and it's by Iowa code that. So that's the change, just making it consistent with board adjustment. Variances under chapter 414 of the Iowa code are under the board of adjustment. And unfortunately, the city of Decorah, when you look at any case about this, Decorah is cited because of the Walmart case, where the city council had, in the city code, the way it was written at the time, had basically given itself the authority to grant special exceptions. And even though it was in the city code, that was in contrary to state code. Special exceptions and variances are the jurisdiction of board of adjustment.
So this correction is just making it.
And just to be clear, this section here, I mean, the scenario where this would come into place is if someone is looking to build something contrary to the design criteria. Isn't that already covered in the site plan, in the downtown site review, which is a little, it's not really.
Well, it kind of is, but when I saw the word variance and review by planning and zoning and city council, that made me concerned.
Yeah.
There might be some areas where there's a role for planning and zoning and city council in that, but not if you call it.
Well, and I'm just curious, I am seeing a scenario where someone wants to build something in the C3 district and they have to go to historic preservation, and then they have to come to P and Z, and then they have to go to city council and have to go to Board of Adjustment. And I'm just curious if that is really what process that we want to set up. If they're going to build, something downtown and they're going to use, wood instead of stone for the facade materials. I mean, those are the kinds of things that we oftentimes will deal with on the piece. And so my question is, does that set up a 4-meeting approval process? And can we call it something different than a variance to keep it shorter than that? I'm just trying to not frustrate someone who wants to do something slightly different than the design criteria.
It's a tough one because it doesn't matter what the term is. I'd have to consider what another, it's not so much what the term is. It's what are you trying to do? You're trying to seek an exception from the zoning code. Exception.
Is it the zoning code if it's not in chapter 17?
Well, that's why, yes, I don't think it can, again, formal, the subject matter is what's important. Just because something's zoning, you can't hide it with another part of the city code and say, well, we put it there, so it's not zoning. Because it is a regulation of a specific district, then that's where it falls in. If it was a rule that was applicable to all the land in the park, then that is not, arguably, I would say that's not zoning. Zoning is dividing the city up by districts, having different rules based upon the different districts that it's in. And that's where sometimes the sign code. Sign code's kind of interesting because it's in our zoning code, but a lot of that is generally applicable to all. You have certain sign code provisions that it's free. But I would, because that gets money, I'd err on the side of caution and consider it zoning. And I tried to think of an example, Joel, where this would come into play, and I guess I could. And maybe it's because I haven't been.
Well, I'm sorry. I understand the need for doing it, but I'm actually just last month we approved the bowling alley painting their retro brick. Contrary to the C3 design criteria, would they have needed to go to a Board of Adjustment for that too with this case? I'm just.
And that's where there's.
Are there some that are not guidelines that are more or stricter?
That's where certain have a problem where but if we come to that situation, it's so we don't run into problems.
Fair enough.
But, and I guess I would say also, just outside of C3.
I know. I just don't want someone to have to go to Board of Adjustment and planning and zoning when they want to, change their facade. Which is not, doesn't require a site plan review. It just only requires a review because it's in the C3 district. Yeah, I understand. Okay. Well, all we're doing is setting a public hearing unless we want to change the proposed language. Anybody? Do I have a motion?
I can make the motion to set the public hearing.
Can we do that on voice vote? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any
Yes.
opposed?
aye.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Do we want to set that, Greg, tonight?
Greg, I lost my agenda. Will you read us the next item?
Hey, Joel, the public hearing is May 9th. May 9th.
May 9th.
Greg just said.
Yep, next P and Z meeting.
Okay, yeah, so the next one here is to discuss discuss and review the amended chapter 1708, 1752 loading and parking space requirements.
Thanks, Greg. I've got my agenda now, so I can. Okay, I feel like we've maybe done a portion of this before. This is basically making sure that our parking requirements are in line with SUDAS. And I think we approved this and it got lost in the jumble in Chad's transition.
Yeah,
Are
it's
you even coming on
it's been
board?
totally revamped.
Okay. Is it similar? It's the same.
It's
the
got a
same
few
section.
things in there. Yeah.
It's not the same. Okay, fine.
It's been revamped, more or less. There's maybe a couple items in there, but it's 95% of it has been redone.
Are you proposing to set a meeting at the next, or set a hearing for this one as well?
Tonight is just the discussion on it, just to see if there's anything that's out of the ordinary that anybody wants to change.
Are there any documents that go with this discussion?
Yes, there's one here.
There should be.
It's entitled ordinance number XXX at the top.
Oh.
The subheading under
should-
that is
yeah.
amending chapter 17 and 1751. And that is the parking and loading requirements.
I'm just on Dropbox. My papers are so messy.
Let me see if I can find it for you.
There should be two
Oh, I
versions,
got
a
it.
red line version and a clean version.
Got
Yeah,
it.
they're-
Yep.
Should be stapled together. Well, the paper versions are stapled together.
Would you say that in general, this reduces parking requirements or? Because I remember last time it was sort of a mixed bag of there were some increases and some decreases.
Kind of does that again. We went
So
through.
where'd we get these numbers from?
A lot of them come from SUDAS, but Jeremy and I went through a lot of different scenarios for commercial buildings and commercial development. Kind of made reference to the building code also and kind of ran some scenarios that way and just kind of came up with the best numbers we could based on all of our calculations.
Yeah, I'd say in general, when we did that comparison, we chose the one that was less. And we compared SUDAS to building occupancy requirements and existing code. We tried to err on the side of the minimum.
It wasn't. I believe, wasn't there a handful that neither were actually a third option of less than both of those two was presented?
Yes, and that was based on some recommendations from the previous version that you saw probably 2 years ago now.
The one that sticks out to me, and I don't realize that maybe our discussion last time doesn't necessarily have any bearing, but we did talk about reducing the number of spacing or parking spaces needed for smaller apartments. And so that was based on, that came shortly after the Echo development, got a variance from Board of Adjustment for needing 1 space per studio apartment and 1.5 spaces per 1-bedroom apartment.
That's in here. That language is in here under multifamily with 7 or more units. So we were looking at the larger complexes. So if you see that studio apartment 1.
Wouldn't it be simpler just to do it? I mean, what if someone downtown has a 1-bedroom apartment? Why do we need 2 parking spaces there versus elsewhere? So my suggestion would be to just condense the residential parking and saying that, you know, for studio dwelling units, you need one, and for one apartment, you need
Yeah.
1.5, and for anything more
So
than that. you need
downtown,
two.
there's no parking, right? But I think the thought here was that when you have larger complexes, you don't need as many. If you have smaller ones, the 2 per dwelling would still apply. But this is why we want feedback, right? So
I still think that if there's a studio, I mean, my question is too, is just, you know, if someone throws in a duplex in a neighborhood, right, and there's a house and a small, whether it's called an AD, an accessory dwelling unit in our code or not, it's allowed as a duplex. And so if someone has an extra unit in their house that's essentially a studio apartment, we shouldn't require 2 parking spaces for that additional unit. So I was thinking that condensing this and just saying, you know, all the residential pieces just into basically that multifamily with 7 or more units there piece. Again, the Quandale property is fresh in my mind, where they wanted to put in an 8-plex, but because of the lack of parking at a site that's so close to downtown, they put in 7 units. And I feel like we missed out on one more housing unit in town, which we need.
Joel,
I
can you
think
go?
they submitted a variance and were denied, if I recall.
No, but because they needed 2 per unit period, right? And so this would allow a similar scenario to be developed with, I don't recall whether those, that may not have been the best example, because I think those were all 2-bedroom units.
I think it's a great example because it really spurred the changes to this code, was that project.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we ultimately need to decide, especially close to downtown, how much off-street parking should we be requiring our residential properties?
I mean, I'm personally really comfortable with not requiring more than 1 space for a studio unit.
Yeah, that's easy. I mean, we could add that to there's no studio addressed in the 6 or less. So we could add studio there. Or you could combine them into one, as you were alluding to, I believe.
Or the 6 or fewer, maybe with the 1 bedroom too, yeah.
Why is there delineation between 6 and 7 unit? I mean, what's the purpose of separating them?
I think that's the Echo apartment complex project where they made a request for fewer than 2 because they were such a large facility. They had some reasons as to why they should only have to have 1.5. I wasn't here, but that's my understanding as to why there was a desire to separate when you have larger, that's a 40-unit complex, right? 1 building. But again, we're open to suggestions. If you don't want to go that route, you want to treat them all the same.
No, I think so. I mean, I think that common in town are 4-plexes, right? And so if there's 4 1-bedroom units, having 6 parking spaces for that type of building is not a terrible thing versus 8. It's small stuff, but you know, as a developer, it costs money to put parking space in, so.
Yeah, I'm all for simplification and bringing this down to as few lines as possible. I did want to go back, just get some clarification. Joel, you'd mentioned the ADU or whatever we want to call it example. How many did you say you were proposing requiring for, like, if it was a single family home with a
If it has
studio
a
apartment?
studio unit, it needs 1 car.
For the
One,
studio,
1 parking space.
for the entire property?
No, no, no,
Or
no.
for the
unit
studio
itself.
unit.
Unit, presumably it'd be attached to a house that has
So that would be
more
3,
than 2 bedrooms.
That'd
so
be
they
3
would require
total.
3 total?
Yeah.
My only issue there is like, that makes it just that much more prohibitive to build an additional apartment. We have a housing crunch, and, you know, kind of doing anything we can to get people to get additional units onto the market. You know, if it's, I have to have 1 more spot on my lawn to be able to rent this out.
No, but I'm reading this and I'm seeing that if you had a 2-family dwelling, you
Mhm.
would need 4 units, 4 parking spaces.
Yeah, I don't like that.
So if you had a studio, you would need.
Okay, so you're talking about bringing it down. I mean, yeah, I was going to try to make the argument for maybe some exception with if you have an apartment connected to on like a R1 through 3, that you not even, maybe it's like half, or you don't need an off-street. Am I the most unpopular guy in the room right now?
We
or-
could do, I think we
or
should have a
confusing
discussion
one.
for ADUs separately.
Yeah, yeah, this maybe shouldn't have been shoehorned into that.
I'll point out some clarification here. I did notice this piece here, and I think that this does make things a little bit easier. Somewhere in the red line version, there's some pieces here about clarifying that, you know, if you have a one-car garage and you have a parking lot in front of it, a driveway in front of it, that is allowable as a off-street parking space, right?
Mhm.
That has been allowed by practice, but that was also at issue at the Quandall space.
The spot in front of the garage.
Sure, it's a parking spot,
right.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, you could argue that it isn't, but this would clarify that it is.
Okay.
Would that be the same as tandem though?
Tandem. We talked about? Yeah, sure. Tandem. Right, yeah, that's what I meant. Okay, I was just giving the garage as an example.
Jeremy, on the church parking, you got 0.4 per seat. Do we have any churches in town that meet that requirement?
It's a great question.
I don't know. That's a SUDAS one. We don't have a good, we didn't have a better answer. I think building occupancy was even worse.
Okay.
I would guess no.
Yeah, we're looking at doing some work at First Lutheran and we have 180, maybe 30 parking spots. I don't know. I mean, Greg, is this the time to address those now? Or, I mean, we're trying to not send you tons of variances to have to deal with every time someone wants to, but
Well, that's why we want to get it on paper now. So once everybody feels comfortable with it, what we pass is.
I'm assuming this commission has also already talked about parking spaces for restaurants and bars, but is that number in here?
The short answer is yes, is kind of an average. They had actually several different types of restaurants. We combined them all into one for simplicity, but yes, it's based on SUDAS.
I mean, 1,000 square foot space isn't super huge. Spaces for that feels could be a hardship for developers. Have that in place, depending on where.
I have an example if you'd like some perspective.
Yeah, that'd be
So
good.
Culver's is one that we looked at. So per the proposed code, it'd have 44 stalls plus 5 per drive-up window. They have 60 plus on site, so give you some idea.
so
we did a-
Culver's would meet easily.
Easily,
See.
yep.
Okay.
Sherwin-Williams, kind of going down, require 14 stalls. Marine Credit Union, 15. Hy-Vee, little asterisk there. If it's a mall, there'd be a special study. That's what's in here, but 150 stalls would be.
That seems like a lot. I can't imagine there's ever 100 people shopping at Hy-Vee at the same time.
Do you have any examples of any that are more closer to the heart of the city?
Difficult because C3 doesn't require off-street parking.
Yeah. I mean, you could use them
But-
as a theoretical, but
We just want to give you some idea. Yes, this is difficult, right? To pick one number that applies to the entire city, which is why we want more opinions on where to best assign.
And I think in the case of Culver's and Sherwin-Williams, I rarely see, I mean, those parking lots are definitely used, but Culver's is maybe different because their drive-through is so frequent, but are all stalls always full?
Lunch and dinner.
yeah, sometimes you might be right on Sherman.
Waiting
Williams, but
out
at Culver's-
out on the road there to get in when the drive-thru's
Right,
busy.
well, the drive-through is always,
Uh,
yeah, wild, but, okay, yeah.
Are there any bars or nightclubs? I mean, I guess Roscoe's, but like outside of C3, or am I forgetting any?
Not anymore. Family Table and Stone Hearth previously.
Not enough.
So, sorry, that's a question actually. So if something like the Stone Hearth, which had a bar, what would, and actually I should check before I ask this, but would the restaurant rules or the bar nightclub rules apply?
They're the same requirements. It's 10 per 1,000 or 1 per 100. It's the same.
Oh, okay.
So we could have lumped that all as one, too. The reason we left it out is there's a drive-through option. We felt it was important to have space queued up for stacked cars.
And sometimes restaurants too, they can be categorized a little more on the seating area, not so much all the kitchen and cooler and all the other areas.
What about your superstores? How does that compare with like Walmart now? Because it seems like what we got for Walmart now is kind of overkill. I'd
Yeah,
say.
we actually ran a bunch of scenarios on that, building code versus SUDAS and, but I'm trying to remember what they had. I don't have that information in
Would
front of me,
Walmart be
but
a
it was,
shopping center?
it
There's
was,
not a
it
number
was
for that.
like, 872 actual stalls or something like that, 782, and they required like 796. So, I mean, according to this, it wasn't that far off. It was maybe
It
a
wasn't. It was
10 to
close.
15 stall difference. Now, that was based on just overall square footage of it too, just rough square footages. But I suppose if you took out storage areas and back rooms and things, you could probably get that down, but it's pretty close.
Well, I would be in favor of condensing the residential just into one piece. I think it makes it easier to. You know, and I don't understand why there's a higher parking need for row dwellings than there are for single and two-family dwellings. You have a, you know, so I just think, you know, ultimately 2 per unit is what you were requiring with some exceptions for lower for something that is a 1 bedroom or a studio. Does that sound to you guys? Yeah.
Yep.
Is that our only major change?
No, I would say the majority of other changes were taking what was previously text and putting it into a table in hopes that that would be more clear. I'm not sure that was effective. I think some other things, adding reference to barrier-free ADA stalls. Again, very much aligning this with SUDAS. There were some things that SUDAS addressed that our code did not, that we felt were important to include. I know the ADA piece was one of those. As far as setbacks, that is the table I was referencing. I don't think we made monumental changes there, but a couple of small changes.
I see that we're going to do some dark sky lighting features. That's great, but just into the parking requirements, not necessarily.
Well, what's interesting is that you don't have any lighting requirements currently in code. So when we review it for site plan, we note if they provide it or not, but there's no X number. I mean, Quickstar provided a photometric analysis of their site plan, but that's not required. We just simply note if it's provided or not. And our recommendation is that if it is provided, it should be, not a shall. But if you want to require lighting details, that needs to be included.
The landscaping on the internal and peripheral, are those the same? They are.
Yes,
different. That
those
was only
are
required
largely
in.
the same, just a little reformatting.
Okay.
I think one of the other things that was an addition was driveways.
Wasn't on the peripheral, on the commercial, that was increased because the side setbacks off the I'm trying to remember that discussion. Because the landscaping had a requirement, a minimum 5 feet of landscaping. Yeah.
So the setbacks in the peripheral. They were not before.
5 feet of landscaping, but 0 setback.
Right, yep. That's hard to do.
Yeah. Okay.
But our code was pretty silent on driveway requirements, so we added some for that in terms of width in the right of way, distance from other drives, distance from intersections, things like that. Paving.
What was the thought behind the bicycle parking requirement getting changed from 10 to 5%?
I'll handle that one. So it's noted on almost every commercial application that comes in. Scooters Coffee, a drive-through coffee shop required to have one bicycle parking stall. Required to have, how many parking stalls was that? 6? Yeah. So I'm emphasizing that one because it was required to have 6 by parking.
6 biking spots?
No.
6 total.
Regular biking stall or regular parking stalls. So if 10% of that figure must be provided in bicycle equivalent, they need to provide 1 parking stall. By changing it, or excuse me, it was 5, right? For every 5.
Now it rounds down.
Now it rounds down. That was the whole concept is at what point is a building big enough that it needs to provide bicycle parking stalls? We thought Scooters drive-through coffee was probably not a great example.
That's a good point. I think we felt that the businesses know their patrons, and so bike parking was something. But yeah, the scooters one is the real reason for that change.
How is bike parking defined? Is it just like a
Not
sign you
well.
can hook a lock up to, or is there a space requirement?
It doesn't.
I think generally a bike rack satisfies pretty much everybody's requirements. You know.
It's a good question though, because.
With a ring on it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sure.
We feel it's.
Literal fence posts could serve as.
I mean, because it doesn't take up, you're not like requiring you need, X number of square feet per bicycle. Why limit it? Or why make it so low? It's like rounding down, like the argument that the, like Steve said, the people that work there, not just thinking about the patrons. I don't know. Seems like a simple thing to, it wouldn't be a big burden. Stop it.
I think with scooters, what did we say, 6 parking spots? And they had 3 employees working at all times? So,
Scooters might not
So,
be the best example
yeah.
for a drive.
Well, let's
I
use
mean,
But I
Walmart.
think another place with 6 parking spots required.
Yeah.
I mean, Ace is not that
Yeah.
big. It's nice to have a bike rack up front, which they provide.
no, and I agree. I'm saying,
Well, let's use
You got-
Walmart as the example then. The minimum parking stall requirements would equate to, what did we do the math? Was it like 75 to 100 bike stalls?
I have been unable to find bike parking at Walmart. I drive one rack.
And it is right off the trail extension.
That's a striped area along the building.
Well, I don't know if we have that many comments. Do we want to set a hearing for this? We can still hash things out.
Is that the motion that's needed for a hearing, or do we?
Well, if you want to set a hearing, you do need to make a motion to set a hearing.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
just
we-
asking Greg if he's ready, if he wants to wait.
John said that would be fine if we
Okay.
set a
Yeah.
date. We
You can
do it
still make
for-
edits to it after the public hearing. That's kind of what public hearing is for.
Mhm.
So
Set a date for the.
would anyone like to make a motion?
Again?
I'll make a motion to set a public hearing. May 9th.
Moved and seconded? Let's do a voice vote on that one too. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay. Fence permit.
Yes, so this will be similar to parking. There was just, like I think I mentioned at the last meeting, there's just a lot of confusion with our fence requirements. Some of it being requirements along city streets, heights can only be 4 feet, but yet we had a requirement that you could, that there was a 25-foot height, or not a 25-foot height, 4-foot height, 25 feet from a corner. But some of the other ordinances read that if it's on the front, it had to all be 4 feet. So, and same with the side street. So what's the point of the 25? It's just, there was a lot of conflicting, kind of messy ordinances in there as far as our fences go. So I did basically the same thing on that second page, just kind of put it in table form so that it's easier to see. Basically spells out all the different requirements as far as classifications for single family, junk dealers, industrial, and so on and so on, with maximum heights and minimum heights that were allowed. And the rest of the document basically came up with a couple of new definitions that weren't in there before, such as decorative fence. It's referenced a few times later in other codes, but there was never ever a definition of it, so we added one. Same with decorative structure. There was really, which was kind of referenced for boulevards, but what was a decorative structure? Is that a 8-foot high statue? Is it an arbor? Is it a bench? We just don't know. And because of vision limitations, we kind of put it in as just a structure or placed item, non-permanent nature, 24-inch maximum height. So you could put a bench in or a small statue or something, but the 24-inch max height was what we were after.
Could a bench be higher than 24?
It'd be uncomfortable to sit on. It'd be more of
No,
a stool.
if it has a back.
Well, it wouldn't be, you wouldn't be able to have a back on it. It'd be
Okay.
just, you know, kind of a little
No, I
monument
gotcha.
bench
All right.
where you can sit. And we also added a definition for living fence. That one also came up too.
I take some issue with that one, Greg. I think that you're gonna make yourself a headache if you're gonna regulate people's hedges that they. Travis wants a word. Oh, okay. You know, someone could plant a hedge and
Well, that's already in our ordinance.
living fence?
Yeah, it was already in.
It's under definition of regular fence.
Yes.
So technically, if I plant a hedgerow, I have to pull a fence permit. And then Greg has to come inspect my hedges to make sure they're in compliance.
But by
Adding the definition removed it from the fence requirement.
Which also removed it from needing a permit.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Got it.
So you like it now?
I do like
Okay.
it that way.
Question about the electric fence. I know there's we allow chickens and sometimes that's required to containment, but also protection from varmints and such that might get them. Is that not allowed? Even if
No.
it's a temporary thing?
No, not within,
It's allowed temporary until Greg catches you.
yeah. Exactly. My eyes are everywhere.
That's scary. JJ brother.
Exactly.
Then it's just, as we move our way down here to like number 3, it was just kind of worded a little confusing. So it was just kind of rewritten a little clearer. Same thing with number 7. Some of it was just stricken out and then a little bit more information clarified. Alleys, just for that sake of the same as corners, I kind of take those very similar to street corners. And I think by just for vision reasons, people coming out of alleys, if there are fences there, I didn't want to see 8-foot high, 6-foot high fences. Kids coming, running by on bikes and all that. I'd rather have it at 4 feet. It's a little easier to see somebody coming along, walking or biking. So that's why we put that 10-foot minimum back from the corner of the street to the alley.
Could an argument be made for
10 feet is shorter than the 25 feet on the street, right? It's just
Yes, yeah.
Faster traffic.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mark.
Well, I was gonna say, I started to think about one-way alleys and how probably most of the alleys are one, at least the ones around me. No, not one way.
They're
I
only
don't-
8 foot wide, but they're 2-way, right?
I don't
Really?
think we have a lot of one-way alleys, just downtown.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. I take back what I was gonna blabber.
So yep, number 7 was just rewritten too, and then we also added the living fences on that next section.
So say that again, they are, to clarify, you don't need a permit for them, but they do need to comply.
Yeah, they have
For
to
the
comply with all the ordinance requirements, so would
Someone
be
couldn't
height
let
and
their hedge
locations,
go
and
to
everything else.
10
They just
feet.
don't need a permit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we currently require a permit for fences now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we always have.
Okay.
It was way before I was here. Let's see here. So next one down, this little bit of just rewriting on the permitted accessory uses, just a little rephrasing on that one. And the same for it's the same section. It's just in different parts of the code, but it'll be reworded there too. And I think that is about it.
This visual is helpful.
Good. It was helpful for me to figure it all out. We're gonna have it possibly drawn up
here's-
by
here-
Jeremy there.
Here's my question for you, Greg, then, is this is where you're gonna find I'm just trying to anticipate where you fall into trouble. So look at this house here and this house here, right? You know, this person can put a fence up to the front of their house.
Yes.
Is that, and that's a,
Well,
Could-
we didn't
should
want to
you-
get,
should you
we
be
didn't want to
allowed-
get, I didn't want to get into language of you can put it all the way up to the front of your house as long as it doesn't go in front of the neighbor's house and so on and so on and so on, because there's some of these houses in down Mill Street, you know, we've got some houses that are set out at 10 feet,
Yeah.
you know, from property line. Other ones are set back 25. You know, and I don't want all the fences out at 10 feet because then we're basically encroaching again on that vision line.
okay. But that fence can still get built out all that way, just only by one applicant? I mean,
Yeah.
all right, whatever, that's fine.
If they wanted it out further, they should have bought the house next door.
Is that the minutes?
That's in the minutes.
That's in the minutes.
No, I'm
Okay.
just kidding.
Okay.
Do you guys want to set a hearing on this one? I mean, I feel like these comments are fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
We could, and I'll have all the correct information on it as it's ready to go that night too.
all right, do I have a motion? Okay, and a second?
Second.
Any other discussion on fences? Voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, final item, unless we have some secret other business. Item 9, discussion of bulk regulations of residential zones, minimum lot sizes. Martin put together this sheet for us of the variances from the past 2 years. And if you want to talk
Yeah.
to some of this is just in terms of, you know, we talked last time, looking, Greg pointing out that what a lot happens in variances of setback requests. And so we put a number to that. We can see all of them here, and they are a lot of setbacks. Some of them are noted as to front, rear, or side.
Yeah, this is definitely a qualitative document. I'm going, like, I was going off of all the minutes from Board of Adjustment, and some minutes were better than others, so it was a little, that's why some of them lack a little detail. But I was just trying to get some color to like what are the variances that are coming through Board of Adjustment that are getting approved? Because if these are continually getting approved over and over and over again, either we should be changing the zoning code or they should not be approving these over and over and over again. I mean, I definitely saw there was a trend with there were fewer backyard ones than I expected. It was mostly, you know, residential, a lot of side yard, and as well as front yard. I don't know if I'm comfortable putting any sort of number to anything of what I would suggest.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. The majority are front and side. I'd say like 70% of them, 80%, but you know, it's occasionally a garage in the back that maybe because of existing slabs, they want to be a little closer, you know, and try to reuse things. But yeah, the majority is out front.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, I guess I have to say, I'm still a little bit nervous about getting real aggressive on side setbacks because of, I think, just expectations of people of what they might think that their neighbor would be doing, and that, you know, there's not a, you know, the variance in that you at least have to go post to your neighbors your intentions to do so. So there's a piece, but yeah. And I think that, I mean, whatever, you know, there's probably 12 feet between my house and my neighbor's house. So I'm sure that neither of us are meeting our site. I don't know where the property line is, but I doubt that either of us have proper side setback. But we're in the original part of Decorah where the lots are pretty small. We both have big houses. Could you, I'm just thinking we could make your job easier here by at least addressing some front setbacks, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt. I was just saying that there's such a lot irregularity as well as buildings because of original parts of Decorah and as they expanded and incorporated more rural areas. I don't know how, can you make a one size fits all for, I mean, I would guess that's what a lot of these ordinances are, is because people have an old house and want to modernize it somehow. But because they don't fit a cookie cutter that we set down, because there are so many lot variances, is it possible to actually do that? So maybe that's why this is, you know, this is why people are, at least are trying to follow our code and come for.
Yeah, well, I would agree that we're not gonna, I'm probably not comfortable setting setbacks small enough that it's gonna fit every single person's request. But if we could do something that would be a relatively small change that would do half of them.
I mean, the one thing that helps on the fronts is we have a 200-foot rule each direction to get the average, and
And
some
those
of- some
don't
of them
even need a
do work
variance?
out.
That happens without Board of Adjustment approval?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because we can take an average setback for those two directions and allow them a reduced setback.
And yet there's still a bunch of front setbacks here. Right?
Yeah, yeah, so there'd be more.
I don't know what the expectation was to come out of this. I don't think we're coming out with a number or anything. Just
Well,
Continue discussion? Is
I
that
mean, you know,
for-
what I can do is I can take a look at this and also throw in, I had shared last month, some redlined proposals to look at reducing this minimum lot size requirement. And I didn't really do any changes in there to setbacks. And so I think I'll take a look at this more than I've had a chance to look at it today and throw some setback reductions in to see if we could approve that as a slate, maybe at next month. Are we close enough that we want to set a public hearing? No.
I wouldn't, I
All right.
don't think so.
Only because.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm. It's up through 2021. There weren't any November, or December meetings. But I didn't do any 2022.
Yeah, this is 2 years. I don't know if you need to go any additional months. I mean, I think this is a good snapshot of what happens over the course of a couple of years.
Yeah.
But I can certainly look at some reductions in the setbacks, and then if someone wants to volunteer to do some research, I know that people have asked what other towns have for setbacks and lot requirements as well, but that's a whole another barrel of fun to dive into, so. Okay, good. Yeah. Okay. Greg, do you have anything else for us tonight? Other business?
I do
Sorry,
not.
anyone else have any questions on lot setback stuff?
I do not.
Okay. Good. Well, then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.